Everyday businesses in the performance and rehab space let their feelings or insecurities get in the way of collaborating with like-minded businesses within the community. Hi, I'm Travis Goody, co-owner and director of rehab at ORKA Performance, and today we're joined by Coalition Calgary and Vital Strength Physiology. And the purpose of this fireside chat is we just want to have an open and honest conversation about some of the successes that we've had collaborating as an integrated team within the community, and also some of the snares we've encountered and how we've overcome those struggles as we've collaborated together on certain cases with clients. So again, we're excited to have a couple companies with us here today. We have Amy McKinnon from Coalition Calgary, and we have Carla Robbins and Nick Simpson from Vital Strength Physiology. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. My name's Travis Goody. I'm co-owner and director of rehabilitation at ORKA Performance. I have my business partner here, Taylor Everden, who's the founder of ORKA, and he's the director of performance here at ORKA. What we were excited to do today is to kind of sit down as a collective and figure out just ways to have an open and honest conversation and share kind of some of our wins and ways that we've collaborated in the community, but also potentially share some of the snares and problems that we've encountered and ways that we've kind of overcome that. Because I think either it's something that's undervalued in this space or it's something that's not touched a lot in our respective educational institutions. So in saying that, I think the best thing to do maybe to kick it off is to just kind of have you, Amy, talk a little bit about Coalition as a brand and maybe what market you guys feel like you service, and then we'll turn it over to Carla and Nick and go from there.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Travis. So my name is Dr. Amy McKinnon. I'm a chiropractor by trade, but part owner of Coalition Performance Care down in Mission in Calgary. So we serve all of Calgary, but, Central Calgary is kind of where the mainstay of our clientele are. We have a multitude of professionals within our walls, stemming, chiropractors, physiotherapists, massage therapists, pelvic floor specialists, fascial stretch therapy, manual osteopathy, osteopathic therapy, and we do a lot of sport injury rehab, post-surgical rehab, very, very similar to ORKA Performance. And we are very lucky to have our neighbors within our space too, Vital Strength Physiology. So we actually are existing in the same space as Vital Strength Physiology, and then we're community partners with ORKA Performance. So I would say our clientele ranges anywhere from as young as 5 years old upwards to in their 90s. I would say the common thread in our clients is there's a need or a want to continue to perform in life, in sport, as a parent, as an athlete, whatever that looks like. And that meshes really well with Vital Strength. And then we overlap a lot with ORKA Performance, with sport injury management and performance care. I would say the culture in our walls it's pretty, we have an array of practitioners who serve a number of different, areas of clients. But we all love to collaborate. It's very often that most of our clients that come in our door are seeing at least one or two or three other practitioners within Coalition, and then likely someone else in the community, whether it's with different businesses. They could be therapists, mental performance, medical, you name it. And so we really, really focus on collaborative efforts to make sure that we're getting our clients to where they need to go. And if we don't know, we look to our friends in the community and, across the country, internationally even. So we're really big on that and promote a culture of kind of curiosity and maintaining, that constant growth mindset to make sure that we're looking for the best possible ways to help our community.
Love it.
Yeah.
Maybe Carla, speak a little bit to just kind of what a culture of collaboration looks like at Vital and who Vital is and kind of the markets that you guys serve.
Yeah, so my name is, as you said, Carla Robbins with Vital Strength Physiology. We exist in the same space as Amy said, down in Mission with Coalition Performance Care. Vital Strength Physiology mainly services individuals between the ages of about 10 or 15 years old and 90 probably is our oldest. And we like to say we're driven by complex cases, so we tend to see people who are referred to us for very unique problems or that have tried a bunch of things and now have landed in our laps. Vital Strength and Physiology is mainly Nicholas Simpson and I in the gym setting, but we have an array of online programming and online coaches from the endurance world. I'm like primarily from a background of exercise physiology, Nick from strength and conditioning. Our online coaches range from masters of kinesiology to endurance coaches in the triathlon world and ultramarathon world. So we have this big team in this tiny little space, or in this invisible space online. And yeah, currently we collaborate super heavily with Coalition because they're our closest neighbors, but with an array of other clinics in town, not limited to ORKA, Marloot Physio, places at the Canadian Sport Institute and other places in Calgary. And like I said, we're primarily seeing clients from all walks of life, athletes, general pop, downtown folk, typically a big group of injured individuals and athletes that come to see us. And yeah, they land in our laps, and we do our best to not just help them with our skills, but then also refer them out to other practitioners in Calgary. I guess that's vital.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say I think I missed the memo today because everyone's got the freshest white sneakers on. And I'm wearing these Ons that have done some miles, so I missed that memo. I think for us with collaboration, it really stems with how we try to structure our communication with our staff when they start with us, is that we want to check our egos at the door. And I think ego can really be the prime roadblock, speed bump that can slow things down or completely block a collaborative process. So we always say whenever we're doing something within these four walls, there's no guarantee that we're going to be right. And there's every chance that we're going to have to seek external opinion to be able to collaborate in the teamwork setting to make the rehab smoother or the performance plan smoother. So I think that's kind of our primary focus when we're looking at collaboration, is check the ego at the door, and then how can we dial in our communication and get an understanding of what are the different styles of communication that are at play, and most importantly, what is the mechanism that's going to allow the client to understand what that collaboration looks like. And so having those connected together to ensure that they're always at the center and knowing that you can guide it from the background, I think is really important in collaboration. So that's ultimately where we start with ours, and then we organically let it roll in terms of what we want to get. And we set our end goal of the outcome that we want, and then we reverse engineer from there and figure out how are we going to deliver this outcome to the client, because ultimately that's what they're paying us for. Like, simple as they're paying us for an outcome. So we need to be able to work together to collab to get to the bottom of it. So I don't know if I missed anything there. I'll swing it back.
No, that's good. You're bang on, dude. You're bang on. Maybe I'll toss this out to the group then. What would you guys say to companies or individuals, even individual practitioners, who are maybe a little bit afraid to open up the collaboration door just because of the perception that it may result in either lost business or lost monetary income for that client or for that individual?
Well, I would just say to them, our experience has been the exact opposite, because we do collaborate with many practitioners in Calgary, and sometimes they are doing the same jobs that we are, and sometimes they're not. But our experience has been that it helps foster the referrals of more clients that come to our business and makes us even more waitlisted and busy than we are. So I think we have had the opposite problem, where we're almost trying to figure out other places to refer clients because too many are coming our way. That's probably a good problem to have. Yeah.
And do you think that increase, Carla, just in business that you guys get is just rooted in the outcome that you're getting just from collaborating?
I think it has to start, with the outcome, because if you're getting referred clients that are having negative experiences or not getting the outcomes that they need, then why would they ever come back, or why would they refer someone to you?
I think if I could tell myself one thing, if I could go back 12 years before I started to practice, it would be how much value we kind of all put in initially on acquisition. And really, I think as our businesses start to evolve, we start to realize that retention and outcomes is what leads to acquisition. Mm-hmm. And if we can craft a good experience for the client and get them the outcome that they want when they come in, new people will come in the door, like you said. Mm-hmm. Anything to add, Amy?
Yeah, I would say, we always focus on outcomes. That's the nature of all of our businesses. But I think, as Carla said, if you're more connected with more professionals who have similar minds, but also different minds, you might shape or change that outcome a little bit as you go. I think one of the big failures perhaps in client and patient education is we're too rigid with the outcome sometimes. So yes, it's important to have a trajectory, but we can, if you work as a unit, you might be able to tease out different outcomes that might be better for that client or seem more successful to them, and whatnot. And the thing I would add too is you will lose clients. It happens for various reasons. It doesn't have to be to another business. It's just clients come in and they go based on life things and whatnot. But as Carla said, we found more of our success and referrals is because clients feel like they can come to us, we can be honest with them, and we're also really connected with the right people. So if we don't have the answer or we don't have the capacity or the skill set, they know that they're going to get to where they need to go. And I think that's where trust comes in with clients. And if they know that they're going to get somewhere, they're going to come to you.
I love it. Tay, anything to add?
No, that was great.
Yeah, that's good. So I guess being collaborative, our brands are obviously quite collaborative within the community. Do you guys find it easier to collaborate with individuals who have just entered the professions or more veteran colleagues that we have within the communities?
You go.
I found that to be very individual. Like it can go either way. Communication is so important when you're trying to collaborate, and it can't just be like the one email at the outset. Like especially for a complex case, that communication needs to be ongoing. And I guess my two biggest challenges over the year for collaboration have been when that communication was stifled, and one was a new grad and very by the book and nervous about like sending client details if it wasn't over encrypted channels. And I do use an encrypted email, but unless someone else is on the same service where you go through hoops with like password protection, then it won't be encrypted end to end. So that limited our communications to like whenever we could get on a phone call or meet face to face. And then at the university, they were also very strict about that. So the athletic therapy department would not send anything by email or text. It had to be in person or on the phone. And especially as your schedules get busier, that's like very hard to manage to do regularly. So I think, when possible, when people have just like, and you have permission from your clients and people are okay with things, like whatever channels you can use to communicate regularly really facilitates things.
I agree with Nick. I think it's so individual to the person. I think your best case scenario is you can learn something from everyone. I think about the new grads that we've had at Coalition, and I go to them for things because I'm like, hey, you just graduated with the latest research out there and that you were provided with. So I'll ask them questions. And of course, veteran practitioners and specialists are going to have seen more bodies, right, had more experience, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they would know more or less. I think the sweet spot is like veteran with a curious and open mindset, right?
And a humble nature.
Yeah, and a humble nature. Yeah, I think if you can, that's the sweet spot for sure.
Yeah. I find sometimes with the less experienced individuals, especially as we get more experience, sometimes they're scared to share their voice because they want to defer to you. And it can go the other way again with more experienced individuals where maybe they're less receptive to hearing new things, but still very dependent on the individual.
Yeah, I like the individualized approach to it because I think that's what we see on our end too. Mm-hmm. I think we get really good in our professions at athlete profiling based on clinical and physical qualities, whether it be strength, power, motor control, aerobic capacities. But I think we have to do almost the same thing when it comes to communication with the individuals we're dealing with, where we have to take a look at the brand, the company, potentially their time in the profession, what their beliefs are, what are their perceptions as to what's going on with the client, and figure out a way to kind of curate and craft a compelling message to get down on their level. So we have to be a little bit, I liked how you said rigid before, because we have to almost approach all of this fluidly and figure out how we're going to potentially craft the same message to 3 different practitioners in different ways to make sure that we resonate with them.
Yeah, I think to add on to it, I mean, Nick, you made some really good points there, and you talk about the AT component, and the biggest issue with that is it's not two-way. Like, that's not collaboration. You're getting a piece of information on what they see with no real opportunity to contribute back, and you're not gonna get anything there. So I think through the years of my coaching, my practice is trying to navigate ways that work and practical. And for me right now, setting up obviously getting client consent, setting up some sort of chat platform that practitioner can create boundaries if they want, because I think what's also really challenging is everyone works on different schedules. We might be dealing with different timelines. So yeah, there might be a message come through at 10 p.m., but if we can shut off your notifications in that platform, it still gives the opportunity for collaboration. Videos can be sent, communication is dialed in, and it goes both ways. And I think just obviously respecting people's time when they're off work, and that person is in choice of whether or not they can chuck notifications on, and we can deal with those things in the moment. So I think just having a system of something that's practical, that works, that you can communicate is the way to do it. Otherwise, it's just one way, and it doesn't work.
I just keep thinking about Les Gramantic in this conversation right now because, Les Gramantic is a renowned track coach in Calgary, and he's, has been known as like the grumpy old man around the oval and, doesn't want to collaborate and kind of stuck in his ways. But when you actually sort of sit down with him, give him the time of day, ask him intelligent questions, like he is totally willing to explain his ways and maybe heed some of his old ways and understand that there's new ways of doing things. Like one thing is like he would never, ever, ever use video for capturing gait. He would say like, no, you need to use your eyes. Like that's a skill that you need to learn with your eyeballs. And, and I said, okay, well, for learning what you see, I can't see it in like fast speeds. Can I just capture it one time? And can the athletes just capture one frame and then just we'll leave it there for the whole day? And he's willing to give us that one little piece. But I think, he would be the example of the veteran coach who's perceived one way, but he actually will, collaborate, and he will figure out ways to teach when connected with. And so I think it's the same with new grads. New grads or younger practitioners and things like that, if you find a way to kind of make that connection first and build a bond, you can break through with some of these people.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't happen on the first try, right? Like you said, I think having those intelligent conversations over and over again, that individual can start to build trust with you as a brand. And I know Brett Bartholomew talks about the reasons why somebody on the other end of your communication might reject change or reject a conversation. And there are these traditional individuals, right, who have done things and gotten results from doing them for a very, very long time. But lack of trust almost amplifies all the other reasons why they might reject the conversation with you. So whether it's because of suppression and they don't want to admit that their approach could be wrong, they're traditional, like I said, they've done it the same way a long time. Trust kind of mends those bridges and creates a bit of a foundation. So if it doesn't work the first time, it might just take you going back again.
Lots of coffee dates.
And nothing really beats face-to-face for that. And, even with the best intentions, sometimes like text or emails can be read the wrong way based on someone's state of mind at that time. But, I've worked with speed skating for about a decade, and having that, what do they call it? The performance team around the athletes. That was a really, the IST, the integrated support team. That was a very unique experience and invaluable for learning. And the same thing, having coalition in-house and just the opportunity to run into someone and shoot the shit a little bit that you might not feel is worth sending a text through other channels. And just to build that rapport.
Yeah, it's massive. It's massive. When you guys approach communication on a client and perhaps the person on the other end is open to communicating, but you guys have differing opinions on the situation, how do you guys navigate that conversation? Are you trying to find common ground with that practitioner? Are you guys trying to influence their belief system a little bit? What's the approach?
I mean, I think my initial approach would not be to change their belief system per se, but to try to, well, understand what that belief system is, and then to reframe what I want so that it fits within that belief system. And if they do happen to like accept that idea, maybe that opens up the door for more ideas in the future.
What I hear there, I think when Nick says that, is just how he's actively listening to what their perspective and approach is, which I think is probably undervalued, where a lot of practitioners, if they're on the other side and of differing opinion, it's just, we're just butting heads and up against the wall, and you're willing and open to, again, be fluid and switch your approach, and perhaps not the perception you have of what the client needs, but again, fit it within their box that they're presenting. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think being vulnerable too, right? Like if you're feeling like there's a bit of a gap there in that belief system, which I don't truly feel like you can really, especially in the time frame that we have with clients when we collaborate, especially with so many clients, you don't always have the time to sit down with someone and be like, okay, so your belief system is this, and like we don't have that time. It'd be great if we did, because I think we'd learn a lot from each other. But in the time that we do have, if you have that, you know, that guard is down, or you actually go up to someone, as Carla was talking about with Les, and we make up stories all the time about other professionals, all the time. And of course, when you're hearing through clients and athletes, you don't actually know where that professional is necessarily coming from until you have that conversation. And of course, as Nick said, face-to-face with body language and all facial expressions and all the rest of it is really helpful. But if you can't do that, at least speaking with them over the phone, or I love Google Chat, or, you know, like a video call or something like that, I find is really, really helpful. But, you know, common ground is obviously where we need to start, and then expressing like, hey, what do you think of this? And then really actively listening to be like, okay, I'm hearing this. Is this what you're, repeat it back, right? Is this what I'm hearing in terms of your goals? And of course, with the client's involvement as well, I think is usually.
Yeah, that's good. I think a lot of this, obviously time is one of our greatest commodities as practitioners, especially when you get into leadership positions and owning a brand. And all of this, I think, takes an individual on the other end who's willing to give up their time and meet on Google Chat or take a phone call. How do you approach situations where potentially the individual on the other end is involved in the client's care plan, but potentially is not as receptive of trying to work as an integrated team, but the client maybe remains adamant that they're staying involved to some capacity? Mm-hmm. How do we still move the needle towards the outcome we're trying to get when we're kind of being met with that resistance?
We have actively invited those types of people to sit down with us for a coffee. Like if we just can't get through on an email or a text message, we kind of really push for that like in-person time, because sometimes, again, what Nick said earlier, like sitting down and having that face-to-face time. And so for a couple I'm thinking of, some like people that were a little harder to get through to or to find common ground on, that was our approach with those specific examples. But sometimes that doesn't happen either, in which case I think it's just a matter of like if you can't find any common ground with those practitioners, just protecting at least the client when they're with you, you know, protecting the fact that they're still looking for an outcome. And so trying your very best to get them to that outcome with the ways that you know how to do that.
And I guess for some individuals who watch this, maybe they're just entering the profession or perhaps just finishing up their programs. How do you kind of navigate that conversation with your client? So are you kind of revealing to them the efforts that you've put in and the unwillingness from the other side to collaborate? Again, if they perhaps are putting that practitioner still on a pedestal and still want them involved, are you exposing those kind of challenges you're getting, or is that something that you're keeping internal?
Well, I'll let Carl answer this as well, but I think one, if a client puts a practitioner on a pedestal, I don't think attacking that person is ever a great idea, but certainly not when they have them in high regard. That's probably going to, break some trust on you, and that's probably going to get back to the practitioner in the end. And again, if there wasn't trust before, there's going to be even less now. So while you can ask provoking questions that get the client to think, that then maybe they follow through and ask that practitioner a similar question, I think that can be a gentle way to go about things. I would never try to speak poorly or say that's a bad idea or you should do this instead or anything along those lines.
You want to go first?
You can go. Rock it.
Okay, so I think when I'm thinking through all of this stuff and hearing you guys chat, I think there's a through line for me in that it ties into this component of leadership too. And I think there's been a lot of work that I've been doing through the leadership realm that I think ties into these conversations. And for me, I mean, shout out Marissa for her work on this, but leading with curiosity can be one of the most powerful components that we can do. And I also think how we craft our questions to these individuals, because it's not necessarily statement driven where we're saying, I see this, and that could be wrong, and challenging their view, but more so how can we craft our questions, frame our questions where we're curious about their viewpoint, and then how can we connect the dot from their viewpoint to ours that ultimately ties back to the client. So I think just having that component where we're really leading with curiosity is the sweet spot when we have stubborn practitioners as well. So,
and to build on that, there's so many ways to skin a cat. And there's probably, as Carla mentioned when she was introducing Vital, these clients we have a lot of clients coming in at the end of the road, or at least as they view it. I've tried everything. How many times have we heard that? I've tried this program and this modality and all the things. So one focus, I know our practitioners do really, really well at Coalition in collaborative effort, is, again, asking those curious questions. But I always ask, well, what did work? And if there is a sticky, professional on the other side that isn't willing to collaborate, what are they doing well? Because clearly this client or this athlete or patient has a belief that practitioner is helping them, and that is more powerful than anything, right? Is the belief that that's helping. And as long as we're not negligent, right? Because there's, unfortunately, we've all run into situations sometimes where, but luckily we don't. I mean, I'm speaking for my own practice. Luckily, I don't run into that often where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to report this person because it's so wildly dangerous what they're doing. Luckily, we don't have to do that very often. So if you can, again, find, why that client believes that this practitioner on a pedestal or whoever it is beneficial, they might be beneficial for you in that way as well. And, in those situations where I've had, I've been stonewalled, for lack of a better explanation, on that other side, I just, like Nick, I'm just like, sweet, so we've got your plan, you're going to see so-and-so here, I'm going to fill in the gaps. I'm going to follow the leader a little bit. And that, I think, is leadership in itself, right? And then builds trust, and sometimes those practitioners and professionals come around because then they're like, oh my gosh, she's not gonna yank that client away, because I think there's a big fear a lot of the time with that too, and maybe they've probably had bad experiences with collaboration in the past. So yeah,
I think sometimes brands too see the way to winning business, if we call it that, as beating other companies. I think the approach we've tried to take is just continuing to elevate your own brand and staying in your lane starts to put distance between yourself and other competing companies. And you want to do that to the point where there is no comparison anymore and you're not in the same market, right? As opposed to going head to head. So it kind of filters through some of that fear of, being willing to collaborate and things like that. I guess since we all are collaborating a lot in the community, maybe we already talked a little bit about some of the things that we found make us successful with collaboration, what are some of the snares that we kind of run into outside of what's happening on the other end when it comes to collaborating with each other as a company? Any stories we've had to kind of address and learn from?
Do you want to go, Carla?
I don't think it's really a story. I was just going to say, like, in thinking about what we do well and what we could do better, I just think about Amy's poor marketing helper lady, Lily, who continuously contacts me, like, we need to post about the collaboration between Coalition and Vital. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, we do. And then it falls to the wayside.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that I could do better and we could do better is actually promoting those collaborations. Like even in today, we posted one thing about today's collaboration. Maybe nobody knows that we talk as businesses and collaborate as businesses, and we need to probably do that a little bit better and a little bit more instead of posting about ourselves, because here we are talking about collaboration and we do it, and so I could be better at that. Yeah.
After I
Poor Lily.
Yeah, and also I forgot to put Nick on the post this morning, so like, what am I doing?
I was like, is Nick invited?
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think it's time. As we're trying to be leaders in collaboration, it is tough. But I think even I talk a lot about it, right? And I know we all talk a lot, and here we are chatting about this and talking. I think that's the more of those. We like every time I meet up with Vital or ORKA, or I come to a course, we talk heavily about that in front of other people, organically, right? It's not like we're trying to market like, oh, we're kumbaya. Like there's a lot of synergy between our companies, right?
I just think sometimes we can tell more people.
Yeah, there you go.
More than just face to face.
Yeah.
I think too, one thing for me is when we talk about things that maybe don't work, and having that introspection to think of that too. And for me, Trav will laugh at this, Rolf probably will behind the camera as well, but I am probably one of the most unorganized people in the world. And so for me to have to like consciously think about stuff that's happening outside these four walls is very, very challenging. So I have to set myself continuous reminders of like, this client is not just at ORKA. There are other places as well, and my communication needs to fill those gaps. So I've almost gone down this path of, can I time block certain chunks through the week where I know I'll then be able to get onto my email, whatever it is, because I suck at that too, and be able to send the information that we need to, hop on a call, have a coffee, all these things. But that's where my downfall comes into play, is just organization, to be able to connect the dots, because I'm so hyper-focused what's going on here, and sometimes forget that we're all involved on the backside as well. So that's my piece.
Yeah, and to add to that, as Nick said in the beginning, I think we're all really good at making that intro, right? Because we, originally we're like, hey, sweet, you're going to go work with Vital or with ORKA. But again, like Tay said, like schedule those follow-ups, following up with people, even if it's just like, hey, how's it going? Because I think we have this, utopia all the time of like, sweet, we've collaborated, the client's going to succeed. And then later down the road, you're like, Vital's like, we never saw them, and now you're like, and then you have to make those touch points. So I like what Tay said about that.
Yeah, I think like, especially with us all on different schedules and stuff too, one tool that we've used here a lot is Loom, if you're familiar with Loom. And essentially we just create a screen recording, and you can just talk into your webcam or camera about the client, screen share maybe some of their data if you've done testing or any clinical tests that you've done, and maybe in 3-4 minutes share your opinion. You get that face-to-face, you can read mannerisms, you can read tonality, things like that, and you just fire that off as a link with the client's consent to the practitioner via email. They can watch it on their own time, notifies you when they've watched it, they can comment on it, and again, you get that face-to-face feel while everybody's working on different clocks. So AI's been great. Let's maybe pivot a little bit into questions just around our respective professions, because Amy, as you alluded to, you're a chiropractor, Tay's strength and conditioning coach, exercise phys, strength and conditioning coach, and I'm a physio by trade. So we've all had clients who have come to our doors based on where we're positioned in the community, and maybe we're getting a tertiary or sometimes fourth or fifth we're the fourth or fifth consultation, and sometimes the end of the road for these individuals. How do we navigate these clients who potentially have previous negative experiences with our respective professions, or have had, let's say, a poor outcome? So, Ames, I've seen 3 chiros. They refer to you. They're going to try it out, but they're not really sure if chiro is the road for them. How do you navigate that and kind of build trust and buy-in?
Yeah, my profession is fun in this way.
We're starting with you.
Wow.
Purposely.
Is this targeted?
Yeah.
It happens every day in my practice, like in our practice at Coalition for sure. In the chiropractic profession, which I can speak to through lived experience for sure. Again, it kind of goes back to what we were previously discussing about what they've experienced. I really try and get a hold of how not only the experience, but how that made them feel after, or what impact that actually had. Because if it's just, if they say, well, I just had I had a bad experience, what does that mean? Right? Asking curious questions. Again, I don't ask necessarily the deepest question right off the bat, perhaps, but tell me more, or tell me a little bit more, ask those open-ended questions so the patient can actually demonstrate what was sticky or what was negative about that, because it could just be, well, I didn't like what they were wearing. And you're like, well, okay, so I'm not worried anymore, right? But I know that's a silly thing to say, but it can be as little as that, or it can be as impactful as, I had to go to the hospital because I had an adverse reaction that wasn't, and then you know where you have to meet the client to help explain. And I always say, if you're in the profession of manual therapy, it's not so much learning every manual therapy thing possible. So if you are specialized, perhaps you're a chiropractor that specializes more in manual manipulation, because there's lots of chiropractors that do that and do that very well. Also have some resources to send for other adjunct therapies. Maybe the client will respond better to soft tissue therapy or instrument assisted or loading with a strength and conditioning coach. I do have lots of tools in my tool belt, and a lot of clients won't actually see a huge difference between Trav and I. But if we don't have some of those things, and we need to find what works for that client, because I'm surprised every day with clients. You think, this Achilles problem, I've got the recipe for this. And then you're humbled every single time because the client's like, yeah, I felt like shit after. And you're like, wow, well, this worked for my last 10 clients, but it didn't work for you. So we need to go back to the drawing board. And again, just find, whether it's other resources, other people within your own clinic, perhaps you refer to another physio within ORKA or at Coalition or in Okotoks or wherever the client needs to be, so that you can help sort of build that treatment plan for that client that's going to serve them. But again, just going back to asking those questions.
Can you speak then just a bit, Amy, before we shift off to our strength coaches, just how you weigh the time that you have in that initial assessment for the value that you put on getting to the bottom of those situations via your questions that you're asking versus the actual clinical exam that you feel like you need to do? Because I feel like a lot of individuals, it comes with new grads definitely in the physio and chiro profession, but it's kind of something that lingers throughout their career, is they're trying to balance what continuing education courses to take. Do I take courses on leadership, social agility, and communication where I can learn how to craft compelling questions? Do I take these courses to get tools for my toolbox to build that out? How do you, now looking back, how would you weigh that for yourself coming into practice, and how do you navigate that initial session? There's a lot there. Sorry.
Such a good question. It's such a good question. I think in school, most of our, especially I attended academic university and graduate school in Canada. I can speak to Canada specifically. They do a very good job of laying out the things to look out for clinically, objectively. Orthopedic assessment. I had some great education at the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College about clinical diagnosis and kind of if someone comes in with a low back, what are the orthopedic tests, the questions you ask, and red, yellow flags, those types of things. They lay that out very, very well. But what they don't do, for lack of time and their detriment at all, they have to teach you how not to kill a patient, literally, and make sure you're looking out for those red flags, for example, is crafting some of those questions like you just talked about, like how that piece is definitely not missing, but not focused on as much. And I think, to their defense, they're only trying to give you the tools, and then you have to kind of go out and, you know, take those leadership courses, take those additional assessment courses. Those are so important. I learned, if not necessarily more, but I kept building on what I learned in school, and all of it is important. But focusing on trying to pull from all of those avenues, I find my practice now, as I'm nearing on 10 years now in practice, it's more about the questions first. I talk a lot with my clients in the first hour, and if I have to, not a great business move, but I'll actually just spend, 45 minutes speaking to them, and then I might have to book them another session to do an assessment. But if that's more important and I'm going to gain more information from there, then I'll do that. It depends on the client. It's hard to answer for everyone, but
I think it's like, especially with individuals who have chronic pain, where
Totally,
you're not necessarily going to move the needle as much as they want for their outcome in the first session. I think we're always balancing trying to get commitment from the client and not just compliance. Yeah. And I think trust is what kind of underpins that. And although having physical techniques to create pain modulation or pain relief will build trust, I don't think it builds trust as much in the initial assessment as, again, being empathetic, showing you care, crafting the right questions, and getting to the bottom of as to why they're there, especially if it's the third or fourth stop for those individuals.
I just wanted to add something on that point. If someone was coming in with negative experiences, so we really want to listen to the way someone communicates. And if we have a new assessment with someone and right off the bat they're blaming other people for everything, I want to phrase some questions to know, like, it's a bit of a red flag for me. And do they have a sense of personal responsibility and awareness? Do I want to take this client on, or am I going to be tiptoeing around some things? But like Amy said, often you need to understand like what the issue was each time. And as an example, I had a client come in with fairly complex neck issue. She'd had an issue with her previous trainer, which is why she left and come to us. And upon asking her further, ultimately the issue was not that the trainer prescribed something that flared up her injury, but just that the trainer then wouldn't acknowledge or apologize for it. She said, so that was the big issue. And then for me, that's no problem. I just know, again, this is going to be a sensitive client. I'm going to use a bit more language, like kind of precautionary language more often. You have a neck issue. We're going to try to do some direct work there, but there's a chance that this is going to flare you up. Like, do you want to try this? And how comfortable are you? And then that way she's not coming back later and saying I'm never doing that again, and upset. And it just rolls a lot more smoothly from there.
Yeah, I love that. And Dad, you call the strength and conditioning space the Wild West. So.
Yeah, 100% it is. Every day. Every day is the Wild West. I think when the negative experiences come a lot, and I think there's something the five of us have in common is that we've created spaces and businesses and clinics that people have gotten a lot of outcomes. And the byproduct of that is that people are communicating and talking, and they land on our doorstep thinking that they're going to get the outcome. And so for me, it ties back to not necessarily jumping straight into the problem. And I always communicate with our staff and our team is that when that person comes in for that first assessment, they've likely made up their mind on you through research and stuff that I've done a ton of it. They've made their mind up before you even communicate. So coming in with a smile, friendly body language, not jumping into the problem right away and really building that rapport. We say fight for the first 5 seconds, like fight for that 5 seconds so that baseline is that trust is started, it's rolling, and then it's the power of questions. And for me, when I'm dealing with an athlete that's had a wealth of problems or issues in previous places, there's one question I say, and what else? And I keep asking that until we can unpack everything. And then from there, I think, how can I deliver the communication to this client, to this athlete, that we're going to identify 3 KPIs. We're going to keep it really, really simple. We're going to identify 3 rocks that we can focus on. Our programming will address those, and then we'll take it step by step. We're going to do our testing. We're going to retest. We have the objective data to pressure test it, and then we roll from there. And I think that really can do way more for that individual of just setting the tone of what that working relationship's going to be than just saying, you know what? Yeah, that program you're on, it sucked. That coach, they sucked. That chiro, what were they doing? Like, why did they adjust you? You know what I mean? And there's sometimes those things are in our mind. And I think we just have to shut that tap off sometimes in that first appointment, and then allows you to move forward with it.
Yeah, and outcomes can change, as we talked about prior to. So understanding what that outcome is for that, understanding what the outcome they think the outcome is, because they might be telling themselves that they want that outcome, or they've been told that that's the outcome. But until you dig a little bit deeper and you figure out, a lot of the classic, in manual therapy, people come in, I want no pain. That's like every day, right? And well, first of all, if you don't have pain, I don't know what you are, but you're not feeling, you're not living. Pain is a natural experience. So if we're not helping and educating clients on what's going to be detrimental or harmful, versus eliminating pain altogether, that's just an example of a can of worms. Yeah.
So I guess sticking with outcomes and turning towards our individual brands, we've obviously been very fortunate to have a lot of successful stories with the individuals that we're tackling, whether they be complex cases or we're the first stop for these individuals. What are you guys doing, Amy, at Coalition to kind of celebrate the successes that you guys are having and celebrate the client for the journey that they're kind of traveling through?
I mean, just that, I think those face-to-face relationships we create with our clients and just creating praise in our 4 walls. If anyone's walked into Coalition, they know we're all chatting and laughing and smiling, and also quite professional too. So if there's a client success, someone's yelling down the hallway like, "Did you hear that?" With patient consent, of course, but we try and celebrate those things in person. Like, that's so cool. Or you're walking a client out and you're chatting about it, or you see Carla and you're like, "Did you hear that so-and-so PB'd on the Calgary Marathon?" As Carla mentioned, we're trying to get better, of course, with patient consent, to share some of those client stories on social media and other platforms. But also going back to our practitioners too, and I always try and do this still as a manual therapist at Coalition, but also as a leader there, is if something's been done really well, we always, we typically focus on what's not done well. But if something's done really well, go talk to that therapist. Absolutely. And be like, "Hey, I really loved what you did. And did you hear that this client said that?" Like, if a client shares something with me that's, again, not confidential and it's kind of that nature, I'm going to go back to that practitioner and be like, "Hey, they had a really, really positive outcome with this." So that practitioner knows, hey, I've made an impact. Maybe I can repeat it, or it becomes more a part of that focus with that patient, and then you can kind of roll with that.
Yeah. Jump on this for a second, because I think too, you talk about that, and that's something that you guys have done so well. Yeah. Is your social presence is rooted in social proof, and you look at like foot foundations, you look at the hip stuff that you guys are doing now, and sharing people's experiences and stories. And I think if I were somebody that didn't know Vital, or somebody that wasn't in the space and I was looking for an outcome, I would just see the pure amount of people that you've impacted. And it's not necessarily Google reviews. It's a simple text that you share. It's, a screenshot of an email. And that's something that you guys do really, really well. So hats off to you for that.
It was an automation. once a month on an automation. I send out an email to my staff, and it says, send me 1 to 2 client wins that you had this month. And so then they are prompted, probably annoyingly, I apologize, but because a month goes by fast. And so I get the emails too. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to remind myself of like 1 to 2 client wins as well. But I expect them to send that to me once a month. And so I get that coming to me often. And then it's just scheduling, like posting all of those things. Cause I mean, there's no shortage of client wins. It's just picking 1 or 2 and then celebrating the clients. And of course we ask permission to the clients if they, I say, send me 1 or 2 client wins that they've already given you permission to share these things. And so then it's easy to just repost. But then I think the client feels, like excited to be part of like the winning post and stuff too, and tagged.
We have a staff newsletter, which, our marketing comms company, shout out marketing and comms, to Gentle Lion, because they implemented a staff newsletter, which at first I was like, this is kind of
Different.
well, or we would view as archaic maybe a little bit. Like it's, and same thing, we celebrate, we do an associate highlight, we do a client win, we tell people where people are, because we have a lot of practitioners that travel the world with, national teams and other athletic endeavors. I was going to say about ORKA, though, you got that gong sitting behind us. That's like success in your face, like those little things like that is such a cool way for an athlete to feel like that's that milestone, right? Like that's, I don't know. I think that's cool. We need a gong. I don't know.
Or records wall.
Yeah. Or records wall. Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. We talked about, Carla just mentioned kind of the successes when you're emailing out to your staff and what you have coming in. Obviously rooted in that is your staff getting successful stories and ensuring that as you guys grow as a brand, you guys, obviously you and Nick can only take on so many clients. So you need a team that can curate similar successes and things like that. This goes off stream a little bit, but you guys made some hires recently. How do you guys navigate your hiring process to ensure that you're getting it right and that the individuals coming in can potentially, again, elevate your brand, but also curate those successful stories for you?
An extensively long interview process. Probably not as long as your guys's, because I feel like right now my team is relatively small. I don't have every new hire that I have isn't coming on for 40 hours in a week. So it's probably a little bit maybe shorter than someone who is coming on, like for one of your 2 brands. But for me, for the past few hires, it was like a long interview process in the sense of lots of calls, really extensive kind of applications to those hiring processes, and lots of conversations. And I mean, I'm even early in the last 2 or 3 people being hired, but it's just takes a lot, I feel like, of, for me, it's like sit down conversations and just going through processes and going through expectations and teaching them technology and teaching them how we do things. I guess that's what we're doing right now. When I hired Nick, we were like, hey, we've been talking, we were writing a little book, we were like getting together a little bit, and then he came on with Vital, and I was like, let's figure this out from the ground up, like together, because I don't have any processes in place, because it's just me, right? And so that was a very different process than now, where, we're trying to become a little bit more systematized and think about the longevity of these staff, I guess.
And if somebody's sitting there just kind of entering the S&C profession and they're turning to your brand as somewhere they want to be, what kind of traits do you look for in individuals when you're considering them as a hire?
I would say like the same words we've already been using, but curious is a big one, like open and curious. One of the recent people I just hired, she's been in the industry for, I don't want to say how many years because I don't know the number of years. I don't want to offend anyone, but I would call her like senior to me. And so I've just hired someone who has way more experience than I do. And when hiring this person, the main thing that stuck out to me was that she kept saying in the interview, like, and in subsequent meetups, how excited she was to learn from me. And I was like, I don't know if I can teach you anything, but she was adamant, like, I want to learn and this, and I don't know about this, and I want to build, and I can change, and I think I'm like behind the times on these things, so I think I can really help you on these things. But she was very curious to continue to grow. And so I think, curiosity, growth mindset, and just an openness to hear new opinions. Those are really big for me.
Massive. Amy, your end, you obviously have built a phenomenal team over there. Anything in your kind of hiring process that you're looking for specifically, or traits, maybe through lines, if you think of your staff that you do have that they all kind of possess?
Yeah. We got, I mean, as Carla mentioned, we almost got, a lot of it was luck too, right in the beginning, and being connected again in your respective communities, and just essentially collaborating before you were collaborating with those individuals. So we've gotten, oh my gosh, we've gotten so lucky. Our practitioners are all phenomenal. And I would say our commonalities are exactly what Carla just discussed, an openness. Also, they're quite respectful of each other's autonomy, I would say, as well. They're all very autonomous beings. They know where they can provide value. And I think that's one thing when it's tough for new grads, you don't really know where that's going to be. And that's okay, right? Like, you don't know where that value add might be, because you're going to, you come into thinking, oh, I'm going to treat this specific population, and you end up on the far end of the other spectrum. But for practitioners who have been in practice for longer than probably 5 years, getting a really good understanding of where they think they can, elevating them and empowering them to say, hey, how do you feel like you can provide, fill a gap or just add to the environment? Because we might have something that we're missing that we didn't even know we were missing, kind of thing. But we always hire the human first, always. Practitioners and clinical knowledge, yes, it's important as a baseline. But as Carla said, I sit with the individual for, multiple meetings. Of course, clinical reasoning is important. I think ORKA does a much better job than we do at, you guys have essentially an exam. You have an exam or an OSCE kind of situation, which I think is really important to touch on. And we do mock, they come and treat us, for example, or we go through kind of cases. But again, it's just chatting with them. I think Taze mentioned it, but being really transparent about where you're at and they're at as well, and saying, hey, we're just super honest too. It's like, this is where we're at, whether it's logistics, like we're looking for this many hours, or this is the room availability. We just want to make sure that we're not giving anyone any skewed expectations. And then understanding what they're expecting, because again, they're coming in with, I've looked you up on Instagram, I know everything about you. And you're like, do you? Right? Like, you've never, and not in a bad way, like, you've just never spent time here. So we want to make sure that it's a fit for you as well. And we have an internship program we're really trying to fine tune right now, mentorship programming. And we've had a couple come through. One of our practitioners, Dr. Ainsley, she's a chiropractor with us. She did her 6-month placement, like the last part of her chiropractic internship with us. So, the dating period was long with Ains. So she got to date us, and we got to date her and see, is this even a fit for you? And in the meantime, let's learn and collaborate. And I find that to be good, to spend some time with the individual as well. So, yeah.
Love it. Ted, you want to speak maybe a little bit on our process?
Your exam?
I was going to say, tell us more.
We've refined it multiple times. You can maybe speak on the performance side. It differs a little bit, and then I'll touch on the rehab.
Yeah, I mean, 100% our hiring process is insane. Like, it's wild. But I think what we've learned is that it is the way that we need to go when we're making these decisions. And I've made a lot of bad decisions over the years in terms of trying to fill gaps in what I see, but it just wasn't the right gap at the time. And so our process right now is a verbal first, which we do on Zoom, and that's where we can really suss out it's more communication leadership style questions. Can we get a little bit deeper on who they are as an individual, how they feel they're going to contribute, trying to identify what their unique ability is on that call from a communication, leadership, human perspective. And then really we filter it down and move them into a practical. So on the strength and conditioning side, a team comes in and they'll actually run a team. And we've got a full checklist of everything we're looking for. And we want to make sure that that's valuable for their time as well. So we'll give feedback on the back end. We'll go through our kind of checklist that we have, but we nail down everything from tonality to do they have coaching tics, inclusive language, everything like session structure, organization. There's all these different things that we're looking for that we think are the sweet spot for running a really great session and building buy-in with the athlete. So that's the second component to it, and then we'll make a hiring decision from there. And the rehab side as well probably elicit some PTSD from school and the OSCE exam, and we bring a real life client in, and they have to go through a very tough practical exam to see. And it's not just can you assess the ankle, it's the knee, it's everything. So we really dove into that, and I think that the byproduct is we're able to identify some really unique individuals that can move the needle and ultimately drive things forward for us. So, I mean, you're the mastermind behind it, so you can always touch on your pieces too.
No, that encompasses a lot of it. I think we've become, as our brand grew, slower to hire probably, and I think what we found out here, based on how we do things and how quickly things are evolving, like you take a look at how technology evolved back in the 50s and the rate that it's evolving now, you really need somebody who's is willing to be open, like you said, of your recent hire and be willing to let somebody change them. But it takes us like 25 to 28 weeks to truly onboard somebody from day one to where we feel like they're independent and competent and autonomous. It's not a quick process. It's not 2 or 3 onboarding sessions. It does take 25 to 28 weeks for us where we feel like they're kind of there. So it's a long process, and I think since we changed our interview process and made it more robust, we've gotten it right every time, and we definitely didn't hire as quickly as we did in the past, but I think that saves us onboarding somebody who potentially is not the right fit for our brand. But yeah, we've split it up into a verbal piece and a practical piece, and the practical piece now has clinical questions for sure that, as you talked about, Amy, clinical reasoning and stuff is very, very important. But we try to really, through that practical piece too, kind of cut through the bullshit and fluff and see, how comfortable is this individual with being wrong, being questioned, how are they doing under pressure, and then we sprinkle in leadership questions and communication stuff on top of that. One of the questions we do is called Half-Life Your Message. So we have them in a minute explain tendinopathy to us. And then we cut it into 30 seconds, cut it into 15 seconds, cut it into 7, same message. And really, again, just try to cut out the bullshit, have them be very direct. And through that, Taylor and I are evaluating them on practical pieces, but also, as you said, tonality, tempo, haptics, kinesics, how they're interacting with the client, are they using physical touch? All these different things are graded for them. And by the end, we feel like we have a good idea as to how they're going to operate day to day when we're not there. And knock on wood, it's been a good process so far.
You also get to see them operate in just pure stress at that moment in time. That half-life one, every time it's like, holy, but it's great to see it operate that way. So
I think another thing we can lean on as leaders too, as we grow our businesses, is what's actually happening within the business. So we lean on our associates for quite a bit of feedback. So you've got the house that you've kind of created. We have 13 practitioners at Coalition, and if I always look to them as well and ask them questions, both in person, anonymously through our marketing comms team, is just trying to see what the pulse is for their perception of the environment and where they feel like they could maybe get some help, because maybe there's another. We've got a couple practitioners that are like, I'm slammed, we need to probably hire someone else, but what does that individual look like? You can get some feedback from the existing people that you have and that you've mentored within our respective companies to help us with that as well. Yeah.
Well, maybe what we'll do is we'll end off with just one quick little question for each of us. Just if we could go back again, as we said, and kind of get a hold of ourselves in our first year of practice, give ourselves one piece of kind of pivotal advice without changing our current reality, what would you say to yourself based on everything that you've learned kind of thus far in the career?
Am I first?
You're first.
Someone said it before, maybe Tay. Well, hang on. I'll preface this a little bit. As students, when we go through the rigorous academic, process that we do to become who we are, whether it's traditional academia and university, grad school, we've done OSCEs, we've done 14 exams in 10 days. You know what I mean? Like it's hard work to do that. The thing I have to remember when I'm speaking to new graduates, and I was there too, is you have to retain so much information, like so many like little minutia to get through your exams and make sure that you're passing all those things. And it's important that you own that and you feel like you do know all that. Now, when you come out of school, the thing is you still have a little bit of that, right? It's like the I know all. And so being a good student in grad school, I came out being like, okay, not that I truly felt like I knew everything, but it's like I kept hearing myself. I had a good a mentor of mine in my first practice, Dr. Dave Roberts. He questioned me. He's like, I keep hearing you say, yeah, I know. He's like, I'm not questioning whether you know or not, but again, you don't have to. He was relinquishing me of that stress and anxiety to feel like I had to know everything, because you definitely don't. And 10 years into practice, you do not know, right? You can gather the information to make better clinical decisions. You have great friends to ask questions, within your community. But that's the one thing, is that piece, it is challenging to shift, and it's okay. But if you can understand that as a student, and then going in and really try and massage that into your mindset, I would say that would have helped me a little bit more and caused me less anxiety as a new practitioner.
I think that's benefited you too, just in going back to the collaboration piece too, because you cited, you don't always have all the answers, but what you're good at is helping individuals find them, and that's where collaboration has come in with you. So even though you're a little bit longer into the profession, you're still acknowledging that you don't have all the answers, which is massive. Right? Tay?
I mean, that's the most loaded question ever. I think going back to the start, outside of just the common ones of really building the networks and the relationships and being involved in the community, I think is really, really important. But I got asked this in a mentorship session a couple months ago, what would I have done differently? And I think the one piece that I've seen so much value in that I didn't nail at the start is optimizing client experience. And having this fine balance of automations and workflows and systems that doesn't come across as AI is running ORKA, but it creates this system of organization and checkpoints and making sure that we're not missing anything with our clients and they're getting the ultimate experience both on the table, in the gym, as well as from an administrative standpoint. I mean, for us, hiring athlete experience coordinator April and Kelsey was a game changer, because they have been at the heart of how we communicate to our clients. What are the systems in the back end to support their experience that's not on the bed in the gym? So I think we use a software called Gemini, and it basically houses everything for us, and everything has a workflow and automation and SMS, and everything ties back to how can we create the best experience possible that ultimately gets to that outcome. But what happens between their first assessment, or even prior to where they become a lead, what happens in that first assessment to us delivering their outcome? And let's reverse engineer as many as we can to figure out what were the through lines that really worked, what didn't work, and let's optimize it and double down on those pieces. So that would be a piece for me.
I think just to add on to that maybe a little bit is, I think it's really easy in business when you look at your bottom line and you're not where you want to be, whether it be now or 10 years from now. It's really easy to try to solve that problem by diversifying your service and adding on and adding on and adding on. And what we've tried to do is just resist the urge to do that and just, again, immerse ourselves into how we refine the current experiences that we offer to try to grow and scale based on that. So I think if I had to speak to myself just entering practice as a physio from like a actual clinical lens, it would just come back to everything we talked about before, just about being open to change. And that the pendulum in performance and rehab, I think alike, seems to always swing way too far into each direction. And I think finding ourselves somewhere in the middle and realizing when we enter the profession, like Amy alluded to, if you look at the Dunning-Kruger effect, you think you know a lot, but your awareness is really low as to what you don't know. And the more courses you take, you feel occasionally less knowledgeable because you're starting to get your mind expanded to everything that's out there. But there is a way kind of up the hill as long as you start to find a balance between, again, clinical courses and courses to do with communication leadership. And really, like, we're in the business of people, and private practice clinicians from physio, chiro lenses, they're their own business, whether or not they want to believe it or not. They may work for a brand, but they are their own business. So I think realizing that and realizing that it's not always when you're coming in to work for a company about what the company is going to offer you. There has to be a balance there as well to what you're going to offer the company and how you're going to build your own brand, because at the end of the day, there's thousands of practitioners in Calgary and in the private world, and people have choice, and we're always going to have to figure out a way to position ourselves ahead of the pack to make sure that we're a choice for individuals needing care. So
Yeah, my answer was, it kind of actually bridges off of Taylor's a little bit, because like thinking back to when I first entered the arena, let's call it, I was not confident in my abilities very, very much. And so, you know, you saying like building up processes would have been so much more helpful, but I don't think I had that confidence to know like this program is a really good one. Maybe I can like make a process out of this and repeat it in some way, or what pieces should I keep and what pieces should I not? You're doing that in your head, like intuitively with each client, but never really systematizing it in a concrete way. And I heard a really good quote recently, and it was to do with imposter syndrome. And it was like, instead of, you know, seeing imposter syndrome as this thing to avoid, it's like, take on that imposter syndrome, because it means that you've like reached a new level. And every time you reach a new level, your imposter syndrome should kick in, because you need to like now check yourself at this new level and figure out like what has changed and how, like what skills am I missing here at this new level. And so maybe the messaging to my younger self might be, instead of avoiding imposter syndrome or lacking that confidence, know that this is just you just leveling up, and like you can be confident in the programs you're writing and the clientele you have and everything, and maybe start systematizing earlier with that confidence in mind.
Love it. I think I would have told my younger self to go all in sooner with the work, and early on, part of it was me having other interests, and part of it was a sense of fairness at sometimes, thinking, I'm getting contracted like for this hours, like, do I want to spend my like free unpaid time watching and observing these teams and athletes? And I think that delayed developing some of the relationships early on. And like once I got into that and just like being by the rink every day, or like spending as much free time as I could learning the sport and with the athletes, things really accelerated for me. And your life just gets busier as you get older, and you have families and other commitments, and it gets harder and harder to do that stuff. So I would have just like bit the ego a little bit and spent that time.
love it. Well, it's been an hour, gang, so maybe we'll start to wrap it up. Massive thank you from Tay, and obviously for you guys giving up your time. We love working with you guys and collaborating, obviously, and I think Calgarians are extremely lucky to have brands like Coalition and Vital within the community to access. We'll see kind of what the interest is, and Tay and I played around with if there's enough interest and there's some questions that the social media world kind of want answered from our brand. Perhaps we meet again and do a bit of a quarterly kind of fireside chat and go from there. Any final words, comments? Anything to plug? Courses?
I mean, what?
Plug your
Yeah, I was
Plug
like,
your course.
Plug your.
we don't have
Like
any
your stuff.
like conditioning workshops scheduled right now. So we'll plug foot foundations and hip foundations. There are 12-week programs that we kind of first like envisioned as a way that we could get clients started on some stuff while they were on the wait list with us. And so those are good kind of, 12-week programs, 4 days a week. And we're coming out with shoulder foundations soon. And so that should be in the next 2 months is my goal. Yeah, that's my plug.
Love it.
I'll just add 2 cents on those foot and hip programs. Is when I did that talk for ORKA years ago, it talked a little bit about kind of 3-dimensional movement and movement through other planes. And initially, as I was learning these things, I had this realization at first, like, everything we're doing in the weight room seems like up and down, and it's not really getting to what some of these athletes need in the sport. Later on, that opinion changed when I realized if you watch the best lifters, they're using like all these multiplanar movements through their joints, utilizing like leverages and efficiency. But through that process, we are exploring a lot of rotational movement and getting the foot and hip to work together in that regard. And that, because when I looked up like foot exercises, I don't know when it was, like 7 years ago or something, the only thing you got were like, ballet exercises, and here's some stretches for your foot and some calf raises or toe isos, towel crunches. So it really just like was born out of starting to explore things and learning how to tie all these things together. But we've had really good success with that with a lot of people. So explore it if you have the chance to.
$20 strength club.
Yeah.
How about that? They
That's
have
an
another
OG.
one.
That's an OG
That's
course.
the
That's
OG
an
course.
OG course.
And not to mention all the courses ORKA has as well.
Yeah.
We've got a few in the pipeline.
What's
Got a
coming
few in
up?
the pipeline. We got another Plinth to Podium coming up the fall in November. We've moved the ACL course from a virtual offering to in-person, so that's going to be January. It's going to be an ACL summit. It'll be 3 days, which should be great. We'll have a cap on what we have available, but we're hoping to launch spots for that in the coming week or so. And then virtual courses. We got some stuff down the pipe for new grads, and some strength and conditioning options for allied health professionals who potentially feel like that's a bit lacking in their educational institutions when they come out. So yeah.
I think, speaking as someone who's taken I've done foot foundations, hip foundations. I've recommended the $20 strength club to everyone and their dog as well, just for accessibility. And then I've taken Plinth to Podium as a practitioner. I would say, all of those resources are have been so impactful for my practice and coalition and me as a practitioner. And I would say to, practitioners and new grads, if you look up to mentors or you have people in your communities doing cool things, ask them what they've taken too, right? That's always a good start too, just to see what companies are doing and whatnot. So, yeah.
Love it.
And cut.
Cut.
Done.
That's it.